Hello, everybody, and welcome to the fourth lesson in the advanced class. We've got a very interesting lesson again today. I'll be using or taking my cue from the textbook mainly, but there's a lot to tease out in this lesson. And if you tease it out, you're making benefit of it. So there's a lot that we can learn from. So I will provide some commentary on what already exists and promise that you'll finish this lesson with a bundle of new words and phrases and hopefully some clarity on some issues that were previously unclear. So let's get started. I'm going to share my screen and we are going to get right into pronunciation. Now, I don't play a huge role in pronunciation in the text, as it were, but of course, I'm always talking. So you have a chance to improve your pronunciation by pausing the video and then repeating words that you might have previously mispronounced. So use all of these opportunities when I'm talking and when the audio files are speaking to improve your pronunciation. And as I've suggested earlier, you can always make a recording and send it to me and I will give you my feedback. All right, some spelling rules or patterns. They're going to try to teach some of the main rules. I think this is a tall task. A tall task is a very difficult task. It's a tall task. And the reason it's a tall task is because there are a myriad of spelling rules, and not a few of them, not a few means quite a few, many, not a few of them contradict each other or appear to contradict each other. And then, of course, we have the exceptions. Now, what's interesting about the Oxford view of this is that, in fact, we are exaggerating. And as you see here, there are about 80% of the words follow some sort of rule or pattern. That might be true in a general sense, but to understand those rules and patterns that comprise, that make up the 80% is not easy at all. So they remove the irregularities. Let's practice that word because I'm sure we don't say it very often. Irregularities. These are things that don't conform to the norm. These are the exceptions. So they're going to remove the 20% and talk about the 80. I'm still dubious. Dubious means doubtful. I'm dubious about this because I have tried to teach, I do teach pronunciation. I'm going to offer pronunciation courses in the future. And I've trained with a speech therapist. And so I understand what it takes to actually speech and pronunciation is slightly different from spelling. But the point is I have taught spelling and it's very difficult. One of the problems is that the rules get so detailed that you then begin to sort of get frustrated. My advice with the newest technologies is just to use, unfortunately, I mean, if you're writing, try to spell it correctly, then use the AI technology that we have, which is spell checks. On Microsoft Word, they have spell check. On any of these AI, lots of AI programs now offer free spell check. So it's now becoming easier to spell correctly, although that doesn't mean you can do it. It means someone can do it. So my advice, if you really want to improve your spelling, in addition to what we do here, and of course this is pronunciation, is to write, note the error, and then try not to make it again. All right, let's move on. There are a few things down below that I do want to talk about. Just get rid of that. All right. So we have a few words here. So you're going to do this first section on your own. I'll provide the audio file 2.11. But here we have, look at the spelling patterns in A. I'm going to sort of move over that. You're going to do that. And I just want to look at these 5 words that they have listed here. I find them interesting, and I think this is a learning point here for all of us. So I'll pronounce the words, and then you can guess what they are by pausing the recording. Then I'm going to pronounce them, and then I'm going to use them in some examples and show you how these words that I'm quite certain most of you haven't used or don't use very often, how they can be used. All right, chime, that's how we say it. Chime, chime. Now, what chimes? Clocks, bells chime. They can ring, but clocks, these grandfather clocks, can chime. But then we have other things. We actually use a phrasal verb, chime in. So if you're at a lecture in an American institution, someone might say, listen, chime in when you have something to say. That means speak up, say something. So chime in is an interesting and not all too rare phrasal verb in English. Howl. Let's practice that. Howl. Howl. Now, who howls? Dogs late at night and wolves. Wolves howl, don't they? Now, dogs obviously dogs also bark. So they bark and they howl. Howl is a very pathetic and sad noise. But now there is a old British term that I want to tell you about, and a guy by the name of Fowler introduced me to it. He wrote the first great grammar book. If you look up Fowler's grammar in it's free online because it's so old. I think it was first published in the 1900s, like 1907 or something. The English in there is exquisite English, meaning it's just so beautiful, and it's of a different era. I really love this style, and so for me, I love to imbibe. Imbibe means to take in. I love to imbibe all of this because it's just so beautiful. It's like art as you read. He's a great stylist, but he was a grammarian as well. And he said a word. He wrote something that I'll never forget. I read this 20 years ago, but I would collect words that I liked, just like I'm asking you to do. Write words down that you don't know, but that you like, and then rehearse them, repeat them. And that's exactly what I did. Until now, a lot of these words are very active. I don't have to think about it. They just roll off my tongue. They roll off my tongue. Now, by the way, if something is on the tip of your tongue, that means you can't remember it. It's almost the opposite. It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't quite remember it. By contrast, these words roll off my tongue. Anyway, getting back to the point, Fowler said, these howlers, it was within a sentence, like they're really embarrassing or something. But howlers mean an embarrassing mistake. What a howler. This is more British, I guess, but I'll write this word down. It's a great one. Howlers are big mistakes. What a howler. So if you mispronounce something on the title page of your presentation to your company or to your students, that's a howler. You can't mispronounce something on the title page. It's just really bad. So howlers. Jaw. Jaw. We have a slang expression, quit your jawing. Now, this is a jaw, and when you talk, your jaw moves. So if someone says, quit your jawing, now they've converted a noun to a verb, it means stop talking, you're bothering me. Quit your jawing. Very funny. All right, next, whirl. Let's try that. Whirl. It almost sounds like it means whirl. Whirl is to make or spin round and around. Now you can dancers whirl around on the dance floor. Ice skaters spin actually, but you whirl when you're dancing. I think that's an interesting distinction. But also there's a form of this word called whirlwind. Whirlwind. And I don't know if you've all heard of it, but if you have, it's within this collocation or context, a whirlwind romance. This is a whirlwind romance or a whirlwind anything is something that happens very quickly and there's a lot of emotions and excitement. So a whirlwind romance is a romance that began a month ago and now you're thinking of getting married. That's a whirlwind romance. In fact, this is such a common one that I decided to Google it. I'm going to close these here. You can find them later. I decided to show you in a Google search right here how common this phrase is, because some of you might be dubious about its popularity. Dubious, remember, is doubtful. So I did a search of whirlwind romance. There were 2,000 news reports that talk about them. Are whirlwind romances just love bombing in disguise? I'll talk about that in a minute. That's a funny one. Incredible twist of fate that sparked whirlwind romance on bus leaving London. So I imagine they met on a bus to London, that leaving London to the airport, they went different ways, but that bus ride was critical and that turned into a whirlwind romance. Here we go. Ashley Benson announces her engagement to Brandon Davis after whirlwind romance. So I'm expecting they know each other a month or 2 months or 3 weeks or something not very long, up to 6 months, I suppose. After 6 months, it's no longer whirlwind. It's just a love story. So I want to mention this one because it's a little bit difficult. What does love bombing mean? Well, honestly, I've never heard of it, but I have heard of photo bombing. Has anyone heard of a photo bombing? You're taking a photo on holiday and someone comes from behind and like is in the picture. That's called photo bombing. So that expression, which is rather new actually since the invention of cameras, we didn't have photo bombing until you could take photos. But then I guess love bombing is that in that similar vein. In a similar vein means a similar way. V-E-I-N, your veins in your body. It's in a similar vein. It's in a similar sort of direction or understanding. All right, so we've made a digression. I'm going to write that word down because that's beautiful. It was a small digression, but a digression nonetheless. So whirlwind, here's a digression is when you move away from your main point. So we've made a small digression and now we return to worm. Worm isn't a great word because the word it represents isn't, most people don't like it, but worms are those snake-like objects that live under the ground. And you often, at least where I grew up, you put worms on your hook to go fishing. My dad used to fish with worms. Worms are also called bait. So bait is the general term. You could put lots of things on as bait. Worms were one of those baits. And as a bait, you bait the hook. So there's a verb as well. Bait the hook is when you put something on the hook and then you cast your rod. You cast out into the water and then you reel it. This is to reel slowly in. Now, I'm confident these fishing terms are probably new for a lot of you, especially if you didn't live near areas where you went fishing. But we did. We lived in an area where there were lots of lakes. And lake fishing is very popular where I came from in the center of the US. So we did that a lot. I didn't really like fishing, but my brother and my father did. All right. All right, let's move on. But by the way, there's one other use of worm that's really interesting. If someone worms their way into the conversation or into anything, they do it in a sort of not a standard way. Perhaps it's a little bit mischievous or deceiving or not forthright or honest. But in general, if you worm your way into the conversation, you somehow get into it. And it's sort of, you think of a worm as it moves. And that can be used as in informal language. Not completely negative, but not generally positive either. All right. Let's continue. Now we're going to go from here down to the grammar and pronouns. I have some things to say about this. So we're going to talk about pronouns. Now pronouns are interesting because in English, we have a tradition that for other languages, it's weird. And I'll tell you what I mean. So if we use the word you, maybe it's not weird for some of these languages, but we can use you to mean something general. And I know most of you know this, but it's great to remember as a teacher. Many of you are teachers. So if I would say, I'm talking to someone who's a new learner or not familiar with English so much, I say, if you mispronounce this word, people might not understand you. And they might say, but I don't mispronounce it. And I would say, no, not you, just people in general. But this person's confused because I said you, but you in this case means everybody, the world, whoever's using English. So you has this universal sense. We call it a generic pronoun. Now, if you want to add a level of formality to that, you can say one. We normally don't do this unless it's a very official event. Or if you're writing, I use this when I'm writing. One tends to have, I'm looking at number 2 here now. One tends to have problems understanding very strong accents. So one is a formal use of you. Now we can also use we and they. So we have a lot of generic uses here. You, one, we, and they. Now, we is interesting. It's a general statement that includes the reader or listener. So now I'm involved when I use one, and it can be a lot of people. We generally don't understand the difference between present simple and simple past. We meaning native speakers, because native speakers didn't generally study English that closely. So I use we in that sense to mean everyone in that category. Let me tell you, there's another way to use we that's really helpful. And it's great in social settings where you need to be a little bit delicate or sensitive. If someone has made a mistake, but you don't want to call them out on it, this is a great phrase, to call them out on it. If you don't want to call them out on it, you can say, yeah, we blundered. We didn't catch that mistake. When in fact, it could have been one individual that everyone on the team knew of. But in order to save his or her reputation, you can say we blundered. Not Sarah or Tom blundered, but we as a group blundered. That's what good leadership, that's what they teach you in the US about good leadership, is the leader should take responsibility. Don't put the blame on your subordinate. A subordinate is someone who's under you. But you need to be responsible if you're leading the team. All right. Now, they as well, they charge, what is it? They're always taxing us. This is a very common expression. They means, again, very general, the government. They're always taking our money. Too much. I think everyone likes to complain about taxes, and we use the word they to do that, which means the government and the people who comprise that institution. Now, the next one here is dealing with reflexive and reciprocal pronouns. Now, you're going to have exercises that accompany these. On the right-hand side, you can see the exercises. You'll do those for homework. I just want to highlight a few things and give you my own twist on it, my own special vantage point. Vantage point is viewpoint. My vantage point is normally spoken when you're looking at something. So from my vantage point, I actually can't see the spire. The spire is the top of the church. But this is just viewpoints, fancy word for viewpoint. All right, I'm gonna address this a little bit differently than the book. So reciprocal actions, whoa, that moved. But reciprocal actions are those actions where each of us does something to the other in the same way. So if you look here, well, I don't like these examples because they're very negative in number 5. So for example, we help each other with our math homework. We help each other with our homework. So I help them, they help me. We help each other. We help one another. You can also say one another. These are used interchangeably. All right. Now, another point I want to draw your attention to that the book is right to do. Number 3, we use it to emphasize the subject. So here we have number 3. We decorated the house ourselves. Now, we don't have to say ourselves. We decorated the house is sufficient. But if we want to emphasize the fact that we did it, then we add ourselves. I did the homework myself or by myself. But I did the renovation myself. Me, no one else. I know you're surprised, but I did it. So this is great in terms of emphasis. Now, I want to talk about reflexive pronouns now in a different way, because I feel that we should just look at the most common ones and understand how to use those. So here we go. The most common reflexive verbs that I've compiled. Now, some of these I'm not going to talk about. You can see them accustomed, but apply is interesting. So I can apply for a job, but I can also apply myself to something like a task. So if I apply myself to my studies, so maybe you should apply yourselves to this course in English, that means you work really hard. I applied myself to learning Italian. So for example, that means you worked really hard to learn it. That's a nice one. And one that's not obvious in its meaning. Behave is interesting as well. He behaved this way. Now, you can say he behaved poorly or very well. You can say behave. Now, if your parents in a sort of informal sense say behave, they're telling their children to act better, act in an accepted manner. Don't embarrass us. Now, he behaves himself is also similar. So if he behaves himself, or they behave themselves, or she behaves herself, that means they act accordingly. They act in a manner that's pleasing for everyone else. So this is very good. Behave yourself, young man. That's the command that your parents might often say. All right, busy is interesting, and I've highlighted it because when you busy yourself, it means you find things to do to stay busy. So while my, partner or spouse was recording a video, I busied myself by reading a book. So I found something to do and kept busy. Compose yourself is interesting. So we know that composers compose music. But you can compose yourself, meaning if you're nervous, you compose yourself by maybe breathing deeply, or maybe drinking some tea, hot tea, to compose yourself, or whatever you do to relax, to focus and relax, to compose yourself. Often we get nervous before performances. If we all recall the first time we stepped in front of a group or students, if we were teachers, we needed to compose ourselves because we were very nervous. Now, enjoy ourselves is interesting. I enjoyed the party, but if you want to emphasize it, I enjoyed myself at the party. So it's very different syntax here. I enjoyed the party. I enjoyed myself at the party. Now, I looked in the mirror and I looked at myself in the mirror. I prepared myself and I prepared. Honestly, this one is very similar in meaning. There's only a slight difference. So I prepared for the exam. I prepared myself for the exam. In 95% of the cases mean the same. But with I prepared for the exam. It could mean that part of that preparation involved a private teacher like me, whereas I prepared myself means I exclusively I taught myself. All right. And just a few more here that's interesting. I see you, but I see myself as a teacher. Surprise, surprise. Now, what about you? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is a favorite question Americans love to ask when they're setting goals and dreams and all these. But if you want to talk about that as a way to practice reflexive verbs with your speaking partner or group, I encourage you to do so. And I think it's nice to think about the future a little bit, have a direction. I think you accomplish more when you have a goal. And obviously you all taking the course do have direction and goals. So I think this is an appropriate question to ask. Teach is interesting. I taught myself how to play the flute and the saxophone, which is a true story. I was a music teacher before I was a history or English teacher. I taught instrumental music and know how to play all the instruments, and I taught myself most of them. All right, let me ask you, what have you taught yourself to do or to play or to be? Dancing or music, these are some of the languages, obviously. All right, finally, there's one sort of caution I want to provide. Wash, you can wash yourself, or I just washed, I took a shower, I cleaned up. These are all synonyms for shower or washing. But we don't say I felt myself or touched myself. Now, actually, you can say these. But if you're teaching young kids or even teenagers, I might avoid this topic because these have sexual connotations and we probably don't want to go there. We don't want to go in that direction. So generally, we don't even say I feel myself. But if people do use it correctly, it's in a situation that we don't want to talk about with our students. All right. Now, this is such an interesting point here. And I'm actually I'm going to listen as well with these because it's so interesting. What they're going to expose you to here are 8 different accents. Look at these right here. All of these. Australian, English, Irish, Lithuanian, a foreign accent, Scottish, South African, Spanish, another foreign accent, and America, which the British would say is another foreign accent. So we've got these different accents. Here's what I'd like you to do. Listen to it and enjoy it first. Just enjoy the variety. And then obviously next, try to understand everything. And finally, decide which of these you find most pleasing to the ear. Pleasing to the ear. Which ones you like the most. And then I want to talk about these during our live because some foreign accents are very sweet to listen to. Others, obviously, less so. So let's decide which those are. And you're going to tell me next Sunday. All right. The next page I find super interesting as homework. So I've assigned all of this page as homework. I think it's very valuable, especially the first one. If you don't get a chance to do anything else, do number 1, collocations, because I think these collocations, this is why I like this book a lot. They chose popular but difficult collocations. Now, obviously, some of these you're going to know, or maybe all of them, but the ones you don't know, you want to learn because you can use these in everyday situations. I want to encourage you to keep studying. If you can't do every single exercise for homework, don't worry. Just focus on the most critical ones, the ones that you struggle with the most, the ones you have a good idea about. You can skip over those for the time being. All right, have a great day. Happy studying and see you soon.